Have you ever felt exhausted from trying to stay positive all the time? Like you're forcing a smile while everything inside feels heavy. You're not alone. Millions of people chase happiness through positive thinking, vision boards, and motivational quotes, yet they feel more anxious than ever before. What if I told you that this constant pursuit of happiness might actually be making you unhappy? Today, we're exploring The Antidote by Oliver Burkeman, a book that challenges everything we've been taught about success and happiness. This isn't about giving up or becoming pessimistic. It's about finding a deeper, more sustainable peace through embracing uncertainty, failure, and even negative thoughts. Stay with me in this video because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you approach life's challenges. Part 1. The problem with positive thinking. Think about the last time someone told you to just think positive when you were going through a difficult time. Make you feel. For most of us, it creates more pressure and anxiety. Burkeman calls this the paradox of positive thinking. When we desperately try to avoid negative thoughts, we actually give them more power. It's like being told not to think about a pink elephant. What happens? You immediately picture that pink elephant. The same thing happens with our fears and anxieties. The harder we push them away, the stronger they become. Research from Harvard University shows that people who accept negative emotions actually recover from setbacks faster than those who try to suppress them. This doesn't mean wallowing in negativity. It means acknowledging that difficult emotions are a natural part of being human. Consider Sarah, a marketing executive who lost her job. She spent months attending motivational seminars and repeating affirmations. But underneath the forced optimism, her anxiety grew worse. Only when she allowed herself to feel the fear and uncertainty did she find forward. She started a consulting business that now thrives, not despite her initial fear, but because she learned to work with it. The cult of optimism sells us an impossible dream. It promises that with enough positive thinking, we can control every outcome. But life doesn't work that way. Unexpected things happen. Plans fail. People disappoint us. And that's perfectly okay. Part 2. The Stoic Path to Tranquility. Ancient Stoic philosophers understood something we've forgotten in our modern world. They knew that peace comes not from controlling external events, but from managing our responses to them. Marcus Aurelius, while leading the Roman Empire through plague and war, wrote about finding calm in chaos. The Stoics practiced something called negative visualization. Instead of imagining only positive outcomes, they would mentally rehearse losing things they valued. This sounds pessimistic, but it actually reduces anxiety. When you've already imagined an accepted case scenario, you're free to act without fear. Try this exercise tomorrow morning. Before an important meeting or conversation, spend 5 minutes imagining it going poorly. See yourself stumbling over words or facing rejection. Feel those emotions briefly. Then ask yourself, would this truly be catastrophic? In most cases, you'll realize you could handle it. This mental preparation removes the desperate need for everything to go perfectly. William Irvine, a modern Stoic philosopher, used this technique before giving lectures. Instead of pumping himself up with positive affirmations, he'd imagine forgetting his notes or facing a hostile audience. Paradoxically, this made him more relaxed and confident. He knew he could handle whatever happened. The Stoics also distinguished between what's in our control and what isn't. Your effort is in your control. The outcome often isn't. Your intentions are in your control. Other people's reactions aren't. This simple distinction revolutionizes how you approach daily life. When you focus only on what you can control, you waste less energy on worry. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes through sheer force of will. You become like water, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them. Part 3. The Buddhist Art of Non-Attachment. Buddhism offers another path away from the happiness trap. It teaches that suffering comes not from negative experiences themselves, but from our desperate clinging to positive ones and resistance to negative ones. This constant grasping and pushing away creates a cycle of dissatisfaction. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you grasp too tightly, you'll crush it. If you open your hand completely, it might fly away. But if you let it rest gently on your palm, you can appreciate its beauty without destroying it. This is how Buddhists suggest we relate to all experiences. Pema Chodron, a Buddhist teacher, talks about leaning into discomfort rather than running from it. When you instead of immediately trying to fix it, simply observe it. Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts accompany it? By becoming curious about difficult emotions rather than combative, their power diminishes. A meditation teacher once gave this instruction to his students: sit still for 20 minutes and try not to want anything to be different. Don't wish for more comfort, less noise, or different thoughts. Just be with what is. This simple practice reveals how much of our suffering comes from constantly wanting reality to be different. Non-attachment doesn't mean not caring. It means caring deeply while accepting that everything changes. You can love someone completely while knowing that all relationships end through death, if nothing else. This awareness makes love more precious, not less. Consider how you relate to your possessions. That car you worked so hard to buy will eventually break down. Your house will need repairs. Your body will age. Fighting processes create suffering. Accepting them brings peace. Part 4. The Mexican Perspective on Death. In Mexican culture, death isn't hidden or feared the way it is in many Western societies. During Dia de los Muertos, families celebrate deceased loved ones with joy, food, and music. Skulls and skeletons appear everywhere, not as symbols of horror, but as reminders of life's preciousness. This comfort with mortality might seem morbid to outsiders, but it actually enhances appreciation for life. When you truly accept that your time is limited, every ordinary moment becomes extraordinary. That morning coffee, that conversation with a friend, that sunset, they all become more vivid when you remember they won't last forever. Burkeman visited Mexico during Day of the Dead celebrations. He expected to find sadness and grief. Instead, he discovered a profound acceptance that made people more alive, not less. They danced in cemeteries, told stories about the dead, and laughed was simply another part of life's rhythm. Think about how much energy we spend avoiding thoughts of death. We use euphemisms like passed away or lost. We hide aging with cosmetics and surgery. We segregate the elderly and dying from everyday life. But this avoidance doesn't eliminate death. It just makes us more anxious about it. Steve Jobs famously said that remembering he would die was the most important tool for making big life choices. When you truly grasp your mortality, trivial worries fade away. You stop postponing important conversations. You take meaningful risks. You waste less time on things that don't matter. Try this reflection. If you had 1 year to live, what would you change? Not in a dramatic, quit everything way, but in small daily choices. Would you spend more time with loved ones? Would you finally start that project? Would you forgive old grudges? Now ask yourself, why wait? Part 5. The Security Trap. Modern life promises safety through planning, insurance. Control. We create detailed 5-year plans. We save for every contingency. We try to eliminate all uncertainty. But Burkeman argues this obsession with security actually makes us more vulnerable. Think about airport security after September 11th. Despite massive investments and inconveniences, experts agree that determined attackers could still cause harm. The security theater might make us feel safer, but it doesn't eliminate risk. It just creates an illusion of control. The same principle applies to personal life. That detailed career plan can't account for industry disruption. That perfect relationship checklist might cause you to miss genuine connection. That financial safety net might prevent you from taking meaningful risks. Alan Watts compared life to music. You don't listen to a song just to reach the end. The point is the experience itself. But we often treat life like a destination, always preparing for some future moment when we'll finally be secure enough to really. Consider entrepreneurs who wait for the perfect business plan before starting. Meanwhile, others launch imperfect products and learn through experience. The planners often never begin. The doers make mistakes, but create something real. This doesn't mean being reckless. It means recognizing that complete security is impossible and often counterproductive. A tree that never faces wind grows weak. Muscles that never face resistance atrophy. Humans who never face uncertainty become fragile. Part 6. The Museum of Failed Products. In Sweden, there's a museum dedicated to failed products. From Coca-Cola's coffee-flavored soda to Harley-Davidson perfume. It showcases ambitious ideas that flopped spectacularly. But here's the interesting part. Most of these failures came from successful companies. They failed because they dared to try something new. Burkeman visited this museum and realized something profound. We celebrate success stories, but hide failures. This creates unrealistic. We see the entrepreneur's IPO, but not their 3 bankrupt startups. We see the author's bestseller, but not their rejected manuscripts. Silicon Valley has a saying, fail fast and fail cheap. They understand that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a necessary step toward it. Every failure teaches something valuable. Every mistake refines your approach, but only if you're willing to fail in the first place. Thomas Edison supposedly said about inventing the light bulb, "I haven't failed. I've found 10,000 ways that don't work." This wasn't positive thinking. It was realistic acceptance that failure is part of the creative process. Think about your own relationship with failure. Do you avoid challenges where you might fail? Do you stick with unsatisfying but safe situations? What if you reframed failure as data, not defeat? A pottery teacher tried an experiment. He divided his class in 2. One group would be graded on the quality of a single pot, the other quantity of pots produced. Surprisingly, the quantity group produced better quality pots. They learned through repetition and failure what the quality group tried to perfect in theory. Part 7. The Goal Paradox. We're taught that setting clear goals is essential for success, but Burkeman presents evidence that rigid goal pursuit can actually limit achievement and happiness. When you fixate on a specific outcome, you might miss better opportunities that don't fit your plan. Consider the story of Jim Carrey, who wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered and dated it 5 years in the future. This seems like goal-setting success, but Carrey himself later admitted that achieving the goal didn't bring the happiness he expected. He famously said, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they ever dreamed of, so they can see that's not the answer." The problem with goals is they create a gap between where you are and where you want to. Constantly in a state of not yet there. This perpetual dissatisfaction drives some people to achieve, but leaves many feeling inadequate. Systems thinking offers an alternative. Instead of setting a goal to lose 20 pounds, you create a system of healthy eating and regular exercise. Instead of aiming to write a novel, you commit to writing 500 words daily. The focus shifts from outcome to process. Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, advocates for systems over goals. He argues that goals make you feel like a failure until you achieve them, and then you just set new goals. Systems make you feel successful every day you follow them, regardless of outcomes. This approach aligns with ancient wisdom about focusing on the journey, not the destination. When you're fully engaged in the process, outcomes tend to take care of themselves. More importantly, you find satisfaction in daily life, not just at arbitrary finish lines. Part 8. Memento Mori and Living Fully. Memento Mori, for remember you will die, sounds depressing, but for centuries, it's been a tool for living more fully. Medieval monks kept skulls on their desks. Victorian jewelry featured death imagery. These weren't morbid obsessions, but wisdom practices. When you truly accept your mortality, priorities clarify instantly. That grudge you're holding seems petty. That fear of embarrassment becomes trivial. That tendency to postpone joy appears foolish. Death awareness brings life into sharp focus. Bronnie Ware, a palliative care nurse, recorded the top regrets of dying patients. They wished they'd had the courage to live true to themselves, not others' expectations. They wished they'd worked less. They wished they'd expressed feelings more. They wished they'd stayed in touch with friends. They wished they'd let themselves be happier. Notice what's not on this list. No one wished they'd been more positive. No one regretted not achieving certain goals. The regrets were about authenticity and presence, things we sacrifice while chasing conventional success. Try this exercise. Write your own obituary, not as you hope it will be, but as it would be if you died today. What would people say? What would be left undone? What would matter? And what wouldn't? This isn't meant to be depressing, but clarifying. Ernest Becker wrote that the denial of death is the mainspring of human activity. We build monuments, chase fame, and accumulate wealth, trying to transcend mortality. But this denial creates anxiety. Acceptance brings peace. Part 9. The Backwards Law. Alan Watts introduced the concept of the backwards law. The more you pursue feeling good, the less good you feel. The more you chase happiness, the more it eludes you. This isn't mystical nonsense, but observable psychology. Think about insomnia. The harder you try to sleep, the more awake you become. The effort itself creates the opposite of what you want. But when you accept wakefulness, when you stop fighting, it often comes naturally. This principle applies broadly. The person desperate for a relationship often repels potential partners. The employee desperate for promotion often seems needy rather than capable. The artist, desperate for recognition, often creates forced, inauthentic work. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychologist, called this hyper-intention. He treated patients with sexual dysfunction by telling them to try not to have sex. Released from performance pressure, natural function returned. The cure came from stopping the pursuit. This doesn't mean being passive or giving up. It means understanding that some things come through allowing rather than forcing. You can't force someone to love you. You can't force creativity. You can't force sleep, happiness, or peace. Consider happiness itself. Studies show that people who value happiness highly actually report being less happy. They constantly monitor their emotional state, asking, "Am I happy enough?" This self-scrutiny, dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, people engaged in meaningful activities report happiness as a byproduct, not a goal. Part 10. Practical applications. So how do we apply these insights to daily life? First, practice negative visualization for 5 minutes each morning. Imagine things going wrong, not to create anxiety, but to build resilience. When you've mentally rehearsed difficulty, reality often seems easier. Second, create a failure resume. List all your failures, rejections, and mistakes. Notice how you survived each one. Notice what you learned. This document becomes proof of your resilience, not your inadequacy. Third, practice uncertainty training. Once a week, do something without knowing the outcome. Take a different route home. Try a new restaurant without reading reviews. Start a conversation with a stranger. Build your tolerance for not knowing. Fourth, implement a death calendar. Count the approximate number of weeks you have left if you live to 80. Mark them O each week. Color in one box. This visual reminder makes time tangible, not to create panic, but to inspire intentional living. Fifth, replace goals with systems. Instead of aiming to read 24 books this year, commit to reading for 30 minutes daily. Instead of targeting a promotion, focus on delivering excellent work consistently. Systems create progress without pressure. Sixth, practice emotional acceptance. When difficult emotions arise, don't immediately try to fix them. Set a timer for 5 minutes and simply observe. Where do you feel it physically? What thoughts accompany it? Often, the emotion passes naturally when you stop resisting. Seventh, schedule worry time. Set aside 15 minutes daily for intentional worrying. Outside this time, When worries arise, tell yourself you'll address them during worry time. This contains anxiety while acknowledging its validity. Part 11. Real-life transformations. Let me share how these principles changed real lives. Was a startup founder obsessed with positive thinking. He attended Tony Robbins seminars, plastered his office with motivational quotes, and practiced daily affirmations. Yet, his anxiety kept growing. His company was struggling, but he couldn't admit it, even to himself. After reading about Stoic practices, he tried negative visualization. He imagined his company failing, really felt into that possibility. Instead of devastation, he felt relief. The worst case wasn't that bad. He could get another job. He had savings. His family would still love him. This acceptance freed him to see clearly. He realized his business model was flawed. Instead of desperately trying to positive think his way to success, he pivoted. The new approach worked. His company thrived. Not despite accepting possible failure, but because of it. Sarah was paralyzed by goals. She had 5-year plans for everything: career, relationships, fitness, finances, but she was miserable. Every day reminded her how was from her targets. She felt like a constant failure. She replaced goals with systems. Instead of lose 30 pounds, she committed to walking daily. Instead of find a soulmate, she focused on being genuinely present in social situations. Instead of get promoted, she concentrated on learning something new each week. The transformation was remarkable. Without the pressure of outcomes, she enjoyed the process. She lost weight without obsessing. She formed genuine friendships that led to romance. Her improved skills naturally led to advancement. The outcomes she desperately chased came naturally when she stopped chasing. David feared death so intensely that he avoided anything risky. He stayed in an unfulfilling job, avoided travel, and even hesitated to form deep relationships because losing people would hurt. His life was safe but empty. Through memento mori practice, he began contemplating mortality daily. Initially uncomfortable, it gradually became liberating. If life was finite, why waste it being afraid? He quit his job to pursue photography. He traveled to places he'd only dreamed about. He opened his heart to love, knowing loss was possible, but worth the risk. Part 12. Common misconceptions. People often misunderstand these ideas. They think accepting negative possibilities means being pessimistic, but there's a difference between realistic acceptance and depressive rumination. Accepting that things might go wrong allows you to prepare and adapt. Constantly dwelling on problems without action creates helplessness. Others believe that without positive thinking, they'll lose motivation. But motivation doesn't require delusion. You can work toward improvement while accepting current reality. In fact, honest assessment of where you are makes progress more likely than denial. Some worry that accepting mortality will make them nihilistic. If everything ends, why bother? But the opposite typically happens. When you truly grasp life's brevity, meaning more important, not less. You stop wasting time on trivial pursuits. There's also confusion about non-attachment. People think it means not caring or being emotionally distant, but non-attachment means caring fully while accepting impermanence. You can love deeply without desperately clinging. You can work passionately without being destroyed by setbacks. The biggest misconception is that these approaches are passive or defeatist, but accepting reality as it is, including its difficulties, is the foundation for effective action. You can't solve problems you won't acknowledge. You can't navigate terrain you refuse to see. Part 13. Cultural resistance. Why does our culture resist these ideas so strongly? Partly because positivity sells. The self-help industry generates billions promoting happiness formulas. Admitting that happiness can't be directly pursued would destroy this market. There's also the American dream mythology, the belief that anyone can achieve anything. Effort and positive attitude is foundational to national identity. Accepting limitations feels un-American, but this mythology creates shame for those who struggle despite their best efforts. Social media amplifies the positivity pressure. Everyone shares highlights, creating the impression that others are constantly happy and successful. Admitting struggle or accepting limitation seems like failure in this context. But behind the filtered photos and inspirational quotes, anxiety and depression rates soar. Corporations benefit from positivity culture too. If employees believe that attitude determines outcomes, they're less likely to demand structural changes. If patients believe positive thinking cures illness, they're less likely to question healthcare systems. Individual responsibility for happiness obscures collective problems. Religious and spiritual movements have also contributed. The prosperity gospel teaches that faith brings material success. New Age philosophy promotes manifesting through positive vibration. These beliefs offer hope, but also create guilt when life doesn't conform to expectations. Breaking free from positivity culture requires courage. Friends might call you negative. Family might worry you're depressed. Colleagues might question your ambition. But those who make this shift often report profound relief, like setting down a weight they didn't realize they were carrying. Part 14. The Middle Way Buddhism teaches the middle way between extreme asceticism and indulgence. The same principle applies here. You don't need to become completely pessimistic or stop planning entirely. The key is balance and flexibility. Sometimes positive thinking helps. Before a performance or competition, confidence can improve outcomes, but forced positivity in the face of genuine loss or difficulty creates additional suffering. Wisdom means knowing when to push forward and when to accept. Goals can be useful for certain tasks. If you're building a house, you need blueprints. If you're organizing an event, you need deadlines. But when goals become rigid identities, when your self-worth depends on achieving them, they become prisons. Planning has value too. You should save for retirement and maintain your health, but plans should be held lightly, adjusted as circumstances change. The person who can't deviate from their plan is as trapped as the person with no plan at all. Even the practices suggested here can become rigid rules that create suffering. If you become obsessed with Stoic exercises or Buddhist meditation, if you judge yourself for having goals or feeling positive, you've missed the point. These are tools, not commandments. The middle way means responding appropriately to each situation. Sometimes you need courage and determination. Sometimes you need acceptance and surrender. Wisdom lies not in following any single approach, but in developing the judgment to know what's needed when. Part 15, Daily Practice Guide. Let's make with a daily routine incorporating these principles. Morning starts with 5 minutes of negative visualization. While having coffee, imagine the day's challenges going poorly. Feel that briefly, then recognize you could handle it. During your commute or morning walk, practice memento mori. Remember that this day is one of a finite number. This isn't meant to create anxiety, but presence. Notice the sky, the air, the feeling of movement. These ordinary moments are your actual life. At work, focus on systems, not outcomes. Instead of stressing about the big presentation next month, concentrate on today's preparation. Instead of worrying about the annual review, focus on this task, this email, this conversation. When frustration or anxiety arises, practice the Stoic distinction. Is this within your control? If yes, what action can you take? If no, can you accept it? This simple question prevents wasted energy on unchangeable circumstances. During lunch, practice uncertain. Try a new food. Take a different path. Have a conversation without agenda. Build your comfort with not knowing outcomes. Afternoon includes worry time. Set 15 minutes to fully engage with concerns. Write them down. Feel them completely. When the timer ends, return to present tasks. Worries that arise later get noted for tomorrow's worry time. Evening involves reflection, not judgment. What went well today? What was difficult? What did you learn? This isn't about rating yourself, but about awareness and growth. Before bed, practice non-attachment meditation. Observe thoughts and feelings without grasping or pushing away. Let them arise and pass, like clouds across sky. This trains the mind to hold experience lightly. Part 16, deeper philosophical roots. These ideas are new or radical. They appear throughout philosophy and wisdom traditions. Ancient Greeks practiced ataraxia, a state of serene calmness. They understood that chasing pleasure and avoiding pain created. Lao Tzu wrote about Wu Wei, effortless action that flows with natural patterns rather than forcing outcomes. This isn't passivity, but intelligent responsiveness to actual conditions rather than wishful thinking. Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew Bible states there's a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven. This accepts life's rhythms rather than demanding constant happiness or success. Hindu philosophy teaches about Maya, the illusion that impermanent things are permanent. Suffering comes from treating temporary experiences as if they'll last forever, whether pleasant or painful. Existentialist philosophers like Sartre and Camus explored the anxiety of existence without predetermined meaning. Rather than seeing this as depressing, they found it liberating. You're free to create meaning rather than discover it. Even modern psychology supports these approaches. Acceptance and commitment therapy helps people stop fighting unwanted thoughts and feelings. Behavioral therapy challenges unrealistic positive expectations as much as negative ones. These diverse traditions point toward similar insights. Happiness isn't achieved through direct pursuit. Security isn't found through control. Peace comes from accepting reality, including its difficult aspects, rather than demanding it conform to our preferences. Part 17, the paradox of acceptance. Here's the ultimate paradox. When you accept that you might not achieve your dreams, you become more likely to achieve them. When you accept anxiety, it often diminishes. When you accept failure, you become more successful. How does this work? Acceptance removes the desperate energy that often sabotages efforts. The salesperson who needs the sale repels customers. The person who needs the relationship seems needy. The artist who needs recognition creates forced work. Acceptance creates space for natural unfolding. This doesn't mean resignation or apathy. Acceptance means seeing denial or exaggeration. From this clear seeing, appropriate action emerges. You work toward what's possible without wasting energy on what's not. Consider addiction recovery. The first step is admitting powerlessness over the addiction. This seems counterintuitive. How can admitting powerlessness lead to recovery? Because it stops the exhausting cycle of trying to control through willpower alone. It opens space for different approaches. The same principle applies everywhere. Accepting that you can't control your teenager allows you to influence them more effectively. Accepting that you can't eliminate all risk allows you to take intelligent chances. Accepting that you can't please everyone frees you to be authentic. This paradox confuses our achievement-oriented minds. We're taught that wanting something intensely enough makes it happen, but intensity often creates the opposite of what we seek. Relaxed focus proves more effective than desperate grasping. Part 18, building. True resilience doesn't come from positive thinking, but from experiencing and surviving difficulty. Each challenge you face and overcome becomes evidence of your capability. Not evidence that everything will work out, but evidence that you can handle when it doesn't. Children who never face failure become fragile adults. Students who never struggle with difficult material never develop problem-solving skills. Athletes who never lose never develop the mental toughness that defines champions. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering unnecessarily. Life provides plenty of challenges without looking for more. But when difficulty arrives, viewing it as resilience training changes everything. Instead of "why me?" you think, "what can this teach me?" Nassim Taleb writes about anti-fragility, things that gain from disorder. While fragile things break under stress, and robust things resist stress. Anti-fragile things get stronger from stress. Humans are naturally anti-fragile, but only allow ourselves to experience manageable challenges. Consider your immune system. Without exposure to pathogens, it remains weak. Overly sanitized environments actually increase illness. Similarly, psychological immunity requires exposure to psychological challenges. Avoiding all discomfort creates emotional fragility. The key word is manageable. Overwhelming trauma doesn't build resilience, but graduated exposure to difficulty with time to recover and integrate lessons creates strength. Like physical exercise, psychological resilience grows through cycles of stress and recovery. Part 19. Beyond individual practice. These principles extend beyond personal development. Organizations that accept failure as part of innovation consistently outperform those demanding constant success. Google's famous 20% time, where employees work on personal projects, accepts that most experiments fail, but the few successes transform the company. Relationships deepen when partners assay each other's flaws rather than demanding change. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or never growing. It means seeing clearly who someone is rather than who you wish they were. Parenting improves when we accept children as they are, rather than projecting our ambitions onto them. A child forced toward goals that don't align with their nature suffers. A child supported in discovering their own path thrives. Communities strengthen when they acknowledge problems rather than maintaining false positivity. The town that admits its economic challenges can work towards solutions. The one that insists everything's fine continues declining. Even global challenges require this approach. Climate change won't be solved by optimistically hoping for technological salvation. It requires accepting the severity of the situation and taking difficult action. False positivity becomes dangerous when it prevents necessary responses. Part 20. The ultimate freedom. The ultimate freedom isn't freedom from, but freedom from the need to avoid difficulty. When you no longer need life to be easy, you're free to engage fully with life as it is. This is true liberation. Think about what enslaves most people. Fear of failure prevents them from trying. Fear of rejection keeps them from connecting. Fear of death keeps them from living. Fear of judgment keeps them from authenticity. But when you accept these possibilities, fear loses its power. This doesn't eliminate fear entirely. Fear serves important functions, warning us of genuine danger. But most modern fears aren't about survival. They're about ego, comfort, and control. These fears shrink when faced directly. The person who accepts possible failure can take meaningful risks. The one who accepts possible rejection can love fully. The one who accepts mortality can live urgently. The one who accepts judgment can be authentic. Acceptance creates possibility. This freedom feels counterintuitive in our control-obsessed culture. We believe freedom comes from having enough money, power, or success to control circumstances. But that's an endless chase. Circumstances always exceed control. Freedom comes from needing less control, not having more. Conclusion: we've traveled far from where we started. From the exhaustion of forced positivity to the freedom of acceptance. From the anxiety of pursuing happiness to the peace of allowing it. From the brittleness of avoiding difficulty to the strength of embracing it. This isn't about becoming pessimistic or passive. It's about seeing clearly and responding wisely. It's about working with reality rather than against it. It's about finding peace, not through controlling life, but through engaging fully with its uncertainty. The antidote to our modern malaise isn't more positivity, more goals, or more control. It's accepting the full spectrum of human experience. Recognizing that difficulty and uncertainty aren't bugs in the system, but features. They're what make life rich, meaningful, and ultimately beautiful. As you go forward, Remember that you don't need to implement everything immediately. Start small. Try one practice for a week. Notice what shifts. Build gradually. This isn't another system to perfect, but a different way of relating to imperfection. Life will continue bringing challenges. You'll still experience fear, sadness, and frustration, but you'll relate to these experiences differently. Instead of enemies to defeat, they become teachers. Instead of failures, they become feedback. Instead of problems, they become part of the path. Most profound truth might be this: you're already enough, exactly as you are, with all your fears, flaws, and failures. Not because positive thinking makes it so, but because that's the nature of being human. Accepting this completely changes everything, while changing nothing. And that's the ultimate paradox and the ultimate freedom. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Antidote. May you find peace, not through avoiding life's difficulties, but through embracing them with wisdom, courage, and grace.